So our next presenter is Professor Don Shelton, who is the director of our criminal justice program here, and he's going to talk to you about the criminology theory of relativity, using genealogy databases to solve crimes. Don.
Should I leave your book up, Amy? I'll take it now. Just so I know my audience, how many of you have submitted your spit to Ancestry.com or 23andMe? Oh, gotcha. All right. I want to preface this by saying that this is a project that I'm working on jointly with Dr. Fred Bieber from Harvard University, who is a biologist and geneticist. We are going to be giving a presentation at the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, and they gave us, normally they're 20-minute presentations, they allocated an hour. You really think I'm going to do this in 7 minutes? Okay. I want to talk to you about the union of two major trends in our society. The first relates to genealogy. Genealogy has, in the study of it and the interest in it, has simply exploded with the development of the internet, because databases all over the world are available. Birth certificates, marriage certificates, obituaries. And so genealogists have been able to expand their interests by finding access to data all over the world. That includes using their DNA. The second major trend is the use of DNA in my field. DNA is the most important development in criminal justice ever. And the technology of DNA has improved dramatically to identify and analyze portions of DNA. We've gone from needing blood samples to using your saliva to touch DNA, maybe needing just a single cell in order to analyze DNA. Well, let me see if I'll use this one. There we go. Recently, these two fields have come together in an amazing way. We have been able to identify killers from examining the DNA of their relatives. Okay. The most famous example shown here is on my right is the Golden State Killer, who murdered several people in the 1980s, but went unidentified for decades until this came along. How did they solve that? Well, here's what happens. The police get a DNA specimen from a crime scene. They analyze that DNA, and then they compare it to the national database called CODIS, the Combined DNA Information System. But CODIS only has people in it who, at best or worst, have been arrested for committing a felony. So there are a lot of people who are not in CODIS, hopefully most of you who are not there. If when they submit that analysis of the crime scene data, they get no match in CODIS, the specimen is simply not traceable. That's what happened with the Golden State Killer. They had DNA sample from the very beginning, but he was never in CODIS. Turned out the reason was that he was a police officer when they finally solved the case. So sometimes, at the same time, genealogists are using DNA to find ancestors. Those of you who spit for Ancestry.com or 23andMe or some lesser ones. From that, you generally get these sort of geographic, is this the line? Yeah. These sort of geographic results, and they'll tell you where your ancestors came from. Notably, most of them are European, because those are the people who submit their spit to Ancestry.com or 23andMe. But this is the genealogical data that you get back. If you notice, though, when you get it back, you also get the ability to download the raw data. The raw data from your from your DNA, not just this geographic stuff, but a lot of other information that's contained in that raw data. Here's an example. This happens to be mine, and a part of mine, and it is the text version of the raw data. So here you can see all of the paired bases here, the base pairs, and their exact location on my DNA. This is half of one page. I stopped counting when the pages went over 239. So there's a ton of raw data that's available. Enter a new company, Jed Match. Okay. Jed Match was started by two guys in a garage as a free database. And what they wanted to do was to give people more specific information about their relatives. They were interested in, for example, in adoptees who were searching for biological parents, or just generally genealogists who wanted some specific information. So a number of people submitted their raw data that they got from Ancestry or wherever to Jed Match, and they put it in their database. And here are some of the important differences. First of all, it can identify additional unknown cousins who did not test at the same company. When you go to Ancestry.com, you only get compared to the people who went to Ancestry.com. These are comparing anyone who's submitted to Jed Match. You could find out the specific amount of DNA that is shared with others, and there are additional matches that were not identified by even in Ancestry.com because of the particular algorithms that they use. Here's the big difference. Ancestry and 23andMe, if you've participated in them, won't give you the names of your relatives. They'll give you a little click so you can send a message to within their message system to ask that person if they want to talk to you or identify themselves. Jed Match lists the specific email of everybody who contributed. And so they identify those relatives by name, in effect, by their email address to you. Well, excuse me. There are also some differences here, and for those biologists in the audience, I apologize. Dr. Bieber isn't here to help me. But basically, the CODIS profile that we have uses short tandem repeats found in up to 20 locations on the human genome. The SNPs, this method of looking single nucleotide polymorphisms, is much more specific and looks for markers on some 600,000 different locations on your DNA. More importantly, when they do that, it can reveal a lot of particular information, not just about who your relatives are, but who you are. It contains physical characteristics, gender characteristics, all of those sorts of things. I was thinking I probably wasn't going to get any response to mine because somebody found the ugly gene on mine, but I'll tell you what happened in just a minute. So here's how it works. The police obtain this scene evidence. They analyze it either through their own laboratories or, in the original cases, submitting it to Ancestry.com. They analyze it and they get the markers. They then get that raw data, send it off to Jed Match. Jed Match comes back with a whole bunch of potential matches, up to third and fourth cousins, even by name. Then the police hire an expert genealogist who uses that data and those people and public databases, remember those birth records, all of that sort of stuff, to construct a family tree of the person who submitted of the specimen DNA. And that reveals potential suspects in the case. Maybe 1, maybe 10, maybe 20. They use that and then they start eliminating, the police start eliminating people based on where they live, what their gender, things of that nature. Once they do that, then once they've identified somebody, this is an example from the Golden State Killer case, they look for discarded DNA. In the Golden State Killer case, they originally got it off the handle on the passenger side of a vehicle. And then they went through his garbage and found DNA on a cup that he discarded. That's detailed genealogical work coupled with good old-fashioned police work. Once they get a match of those two, then they can get a warrant to go and get a live sample from the suspect based on that match. So a major company has evolved just in the last few months called Parabon, and that major company will do all of that family tree forming and all of that genealogical research for the police to identify possible suspects, and they will even use that data. Remember all that data about personal characteristics? To develop an image. This happens to be an image that they developed compared with the suspect who was eventually identified. Parabon is currently working on over 120 cases where they're doing this type of research. Well, how likely is it that Jed Match will come back with a relative that you can trace? A very recent study showed that as the database of Jed Match increases, so will the likelihood. They predict that when it's up to 3 million, and it's almost up to 2 million now, that over 90% would return at least one third cousin match. A third cousin means that you share a great-great-grandparent. This is probably mine. And a 40% chance that a second cousin, meaning you share a great-grandparent. I thought that was interesting and how prophetic. I submitted all my stuff because I thought I'd be my own guinea pig to Jed Match. This morning, I picked up my Lifeline, this phone, and this email came in regarding Jed Match, I am your relative. Hi there, you were one of my matches. Looks like 4th generation matches in my kit number so-and-so. I'm looking for so-and-so. Do you have relatives with those names? Thanks, Ernesto Rupert, Sao Paulo, Brazil. I guess it works. 4th generation is a little further removed, and I never heard of Rupert, but at any rate. But that likelihood is great. Let me move on very quickly to these concerns. We're examining, all right, I'll be quick. We're examining constitutional issues. That is it a violation of the 4th Amendment to go about this process in that way? My conclusion is that it is not. Among other things, when you go to Jed Match, here's the disclaimer that you see. They tell you that this is going to be used for identification of relatives that have committed crimes. And so that's the doctrine of waiver. It is also the issue of the legal issue of standing, that the suspect has no claim if the rights of his relatives were violated, because it's not a violation of his right. I'll move quickly, though, however, to the question of ethical considerations. Is that really a knowing waiver? Do people read that legalese or just flip through it? There's a lot of medical information in that data. What's the danger, the security danger of that from hacking? Insurance companies would pay a lot for your medical information. So there are some severe privacy concerns. On the other hand, when we talk about ethical issues, what is our ethical obligation to help the police? Would you not want to share your genetic information to catch a killer or a rapist? Or more importantly, would you not want to share your genetic information to catch that person before they commit another murder or another rape? Those are significant ethical issues that I think each person has to resolve individually, but that Dr. Bieber and I are looking at in our study. So thank you very much. Sorry, I go over.